Hello everyone, we have a very special guest on the sofa today down at Lattice. We've got Dave Macleod, who's just been over doing some testing and chatting to Ollie Tor, so watch out for that content. But I have got him on the sofa and I'm going to ask him some questions about climbing, training, performance and many others. Now importantly on this one, and for everyone watching, you're going to be really used to stuff that comes from Dave, which is really, really detailed, often can get stuck way down these rabbit holes of just super interesting stuff, which, not taking away from it, isn't valuable, but I am going to force Dave, like this, into sub 1 minute answers on topics that all of you have asked on social media, things that we've had from our coaches here at Lattice also asking. And they're going to be on 5 main topics. So that is projecting, training methods, grip types, climbing gear, and nutrition.
Okay.
I've made nutrition go at the end because I know there's a whole load of pain with that.
I think I can be succinct with nutrition as well.
Yeah?
And rise to the challenge.
Okay, so you ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with projecting first off. Has there been any psychological barriers that you have crossed in a sudden moment in your climbing career, and why has that mattered?
Probably just belief that I can actually do hard climbs. I started off in not being good at climbing to start with, so it was a huge deal for me to actually think that these climbs were for me, and I only got into that because my goals were accidentally hard climbs. I actually saw people on routes. The first day I ever went climbing, I saw people on the hardest route in Scotland at the time, and that became my goal. And I think if I hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't do it. So it was just belief really, and thinking that I could actually do it. That was the hardest thing for me.
And why do you think that actually matters for people? Why does belief matter?
If you think that, and I don't think you need to really believe that you can do it, but just believe that it's okay for you to try hard routes. I actually think it's important for them to be hard enough that there is an uncertainty that you can do them. That's what makes them interesting and adventurous to do. But it matters because that leads you to actually act in a way that you will actually do it, to take your training seriously, to actually plan it out and say, no, I am going to, move to that place, or do that, change my job, or arrange my training, or get a coach, or any of the steps you need to do to actually make it happen. And it also leads you away from the moment where you go, no, this is too hard. Yeah. Because inevitably you're going to go through that get to that point many times, and it's very easy to go, no, this is not really for me. But if you really believe that it is, then you just carry right on, and that's often what you need.
Okay, right. Number 1, we got through that. It was a terrible job of staying under 60 seconds though.
That was 2 questions though.
It's still my fault though. I didn't get you under. I should have been harder. Right. Okay, number 2 is, do you miss or do you need a partner, or have you needed a partner or wanted a partner in your climbing career?
For training or for climbing? For both.
Or either.
I think it is beneficial to have good partners for both training and climbing, but I have got so used to training on my own and actually trying projects on my own that I don't at least feel like it affects me. Perhaps it actually does, and I don't realise it. But I feel totally fine doing it all on my own and feeling really self-directed. And in some ways, I think it helps because ultimately it's you that has to do the climb. And so I think I like the fact that there's no one else to fall back on, and I have to be able to generate effort and focus and all the rest of it in a self-directed way.
Yeah. Good point, that. Okay, next one is, why don't you project harder sport routes considering the depth of bouldering that you have at a very high grade relative to the sport grade?
That's purely just the consequence of not having much sport climbing in Scotland. There's so little of it, and a lot of the good ones I've done. And I do have a couple of sport projects that I want to try. There's actually a 9A project that I did try last month, but I'm waiting for it to dry out again. But there's so little of it, and I'm sort of a bit more reluctant to travel these days for lots of reasons. But so yeah, that's the main reason. It's just easier to go bouldering because there's tons of that. And a lot of the trad climbs that I try, they are just like hard sport climbs for most of the time I'm trying them, which is on a shunt. And then you just have this nice bit at the end where you lead it with hardly any gear. Yeah.
Would you rather have the fingers of Magos, Ondra's technique, or the mind of Honnold to take you to the next level? Which would you take?
Well, assuming that I can add it on to the attributes I already have,
you can.
I would take Magos's finger strength. Yeah, because I think I could get as much mileage as anyone out of a given amount of finger strength. For every kilo of force I can pull on an edge, then I think I can turn that into hard grades because I've developed tactics and hopefully technique for many years.
Yeah. I have to say it's the same answer from me.
Yeah.
Okay, next we're going to go on to training methods. Strength increases, actual genuine strength increases, not cutting weight or getting more efficient with your climbing tactics, technique. What actually works post 40s or in 40s, do you think?
Well, largely the same things that works at any age, which is consistent application of like hard effort. So trying hard in the sets, actually learning to recruit every last muscle fiber, and not taking breaks, in large breaks in the year, consistently getting through the training. But maybe one thing that's neglected, and you can afford to neglect when you're younger, is just resting well. Good sleep, good diet, and good stress management in general. So getting a good lifestyle set up to be able to train hard and recover from it.
Yeah. Stress management and resting. I think you absolutely nailed that. Very, very, very important. How do you find focus, or does it just naturally come?
Sorry,
and I asked this in context that the person who asked it said you're very broad in your disciplines.
Oh, right.
How do you get focused?
Like focused on one discipline, or I guess I just love climbing, and I love the variety of climbing, and I love the intensity of each discipline. So I like it all so much that I've never found it difficult. I barely even think about it. I just find that I just think about the climb, and that leads me to the focus, and I don't have to exert any additional effort to do that. So I always find that to get things like discipline to train or focus, I just think of like, well, what's the climb and why do I want to do it? And then I get really passionate about the climb, and then the rest just flows on.
Yeah. I'd give exactly the same answer.
Yeah.
What does, what would you change, given that you wrote 9 out of 10 quite some time ago? What would you change now if you rewrote that book, or if there is anything?
Yeah, well, some of it's slightly dated now in the sense that climbing walls have changed. So that the style of climbing has changed a lot. So certainly for, I wrote it primarily for rock climbers, really. Although rock climbing indoors and outdoors was a lot closer together at that time, it's diverged a bit. So I just think off the top of my head, things like sections I wrote on flexibility. You can really get away with poor flexibility to a greater extent on real rock than you can on modern set comp style problems. Of course, it's still important to train, but I would maybe change that a little bit. And the section very briefly on nutrition, it only really had one context. And now I kind of understand better that you can actually do well in a number of different approaches to nutrition, and I would probably change that as well. But broadly, the same principles. I mean, I try to direct people to principles, and that's still important.
Yeah, signposting.
Yeah.
Actually, the next question you just answered, so that's great. Let's hammer
Cool.
that one out.
Less than a minute.
Next question is 3-finger drag. WTF? What the hell is going on with this, Dave?
Yeah, like lots of people comment to me about that I often show it on my social media because I'm stronger on that grip type than other grip types. And I really like that grip type. It's very relaxed. I feel like I can hang on for a lot longer, like I can if I'm pumped, I can take a hold like that and I feel like I can still hold on to it. And I also feel like I respond well to training with that grip. So a lot of people feel weak on it, and I think it's purely because they haven't trained it enough.
Controversial. Are all your three fingers the same length? For the viewers, no, they're not. Dave hasn't got some special fingers.
Yeah. I mean, do you think my hands look unusual in any way in the finger length?
No, not particularly. No.
I think it's just training.
Yeah, there you go, folks. Just training. And being Scottish as well. There's a good reputation of producing good climbers out of Scotland. Okay, next question is, or short answer, and I know this one is tricky, but training full crimp.
Oh yeah, so I do think training full crimp is important. The only thing is there's a practical aspect of training full crimp, which is that when you're hanging two-armed off a bar, it's slightly more awkward with your thumb turned in like that, whereas when you're climbing with holds that are sort of semi-side pulls or semi-side pulls, as you often are when you're climbing on a board or a hard problem, then the thumb over feels a lot more natural. So you tend to default to half crimp when you're, especially one hand on a fingerboard, and that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with training full crimp, but I would say that if you're a relative novice or just generally quite weak and have poor control, then maybe the half crimp's a little bit safer. But you do have to, I do think it is important to train full crimp. Yeah.
Okay. Next question is, has your grip type preference changed over the years? Because you've been climbing a long time.
Yeah, so I used to crimp everything.
Full crimp everything, not half crimp.
Full or half, but more full in my early years of my climbing. And then I went through a period of 5 years where I got pulley injuries in almost all my fingers, just one after the other. I think I had more than 15 in the course of about 5 years. That's when I started to climb with 3-finger drag, purely because it was either that or not climbing. And then I just got stronger on it. And then I got to the point where I started to prefer it. And so even when I wasn't injured, I started to use it more and more. And I still just absolutely love that grip. So yeah, I've been climbing a long time. But that preference that I gained for 3-finger drag, I've held on to, despite, I could go back to crimping again, but I haven't.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to climbing gear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this will be interesting when we do this in the longer form format. But what's your views on home gym versus commercial gym? Which is more useful? What are the pros and cons?
Oh, well, I mean,
in less than a minute.
Yeah, like home gyms as in a board.
Yeah, basically.
The convenience aspect is massive, and the ability to control the environment, especially for things like skin. I find I really don't do well in warm temperatures. My skin is just terrible. So being able to have that under your control is fantastic, and to be able to set it in such a way that matches your weaknesses is absolutely great. But it sometimes can lack the social aspect, where partners can push you, where you go, wow, I'm weak compared to them, and really I feel like I shouldn't be, and it drives you forward. So if that's a factor, then maybe the commercial gym can be better, but you can always invite people to your home gym.
Yeah. Helmets.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say helmets and hard at your limit climbing.
I do just put my helmet on for all trad climbing now as a matter of course.
You didn't say much before, did you?
I didn't before, no, and I don't really have a reason for that. And I think in a lot of trad climbing situations, the risk of hitting your head is extremely low. So if I forgot my helmet, I wouldn't not go trad climbing, if you know what I mean. But I do just kind of wear it as a matter of course. But in a lot of mountain trad though, there's still it's things dropping on your head that's more the problem. But I've definitely seen a lot of falls that you spin in and you end up hitting your head. That has happened to many other climbers. Fortunately, not me.
Yeah. Quick release mechanisms for placing gear really quickly. So tape, Velcro, also.
Yeah.
Is it actually worth it?
Yeah, I think it is worth it. I used to have a Black Diamond harness where they had a little rubber hook in the gear loop.
Oh, did they?
And I used that so many times, and I wish they would bring it back.
Yeah.
And I've done it with finger tape, and that works. And I've actually just been sticking Velcro to my harness for a project I want to do soon.
Yeah, I put it here.
You put it there,
yeah. I need to take up my chest quicker.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, okay. And last one is shoes. Mm-hmm. And what I'm going to say specifically about this is stiffness of shoes.
Yeah, I've always felt that my feet are weak, and they need some degree of stiffness. So I choose a medium shoe. But it amazes me actually that so many people have such a strong preference for soft shoes. And I have to say, I don't really understand it. I don't understand why they like them so much, because I find a little bit more support gives you a lot more power. But having said that, I notice that a lot more trad climbing. Yeah, where you're just on your feet a long time. I just get tired.
Yeah, I'm screwed by a soft shoe.
Yeah,
I basically climb about 5 grades lower.
Yeah.
It's just outrageous. And I don't know how people do it.
Yeah, there you go.
Last section, the most painful section for me personally, but I think this is a zone of glory for you. Keto, mm-hmm. and you're well known for views, education, experimenting in this range. Is this more about self-experimentation, education, or finding the answer or the right way? What's it really about?
Well, the right way in so much as the right way for my own performance. Like, that's always my ultimate thing that I'm doing in my own self-experiments, is just trying for me to get better at my own climbing. But secondary to that, I like to learn about physiology and how the body responds in general, and if that's useful to other people, even if it's only a small subset of people, or even if lots of other people go, okay, that works for them and it wouldn't work for me for that reason, then that's great. But yeah, primarily for my own performance.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask this question. I didn't want to, but it's a pretty good acquaintance friend of mine, and I've got to ask it because I know he'll be so happy if I do. Okay. Is there anything from a dietary sense that you've done in, I think, a lot of reading for male baldness?
No, although I do know that male baldness associates with insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome in general. But not many climbers have full-blown metabolic syndrome. Although, having said that, some athletes, when they get to their 40s, they actually find that they probably do have some signs of metabolic problems. But beyond that, I don't really know.
Okay. If you're listening, Char, I hope you are. It's Dave's answer. Okay, last two. Do you have an issue? Have you got beef, ironically, with vegetarians?
Absolutely not. No.
Are you sure?
Absolutely sure. With one exception. So I have heard not so much vegetarians, but with some people in the vegan community, especially on social media, say that animal foods, especially meat and red meat, is unhealthy, and that's just not supported by the data at all. Okay. So that's a definite beef, because it's just not correct.
Yeah. Last question is, how do you personally do your feedback monitoring of your dietary changes? Because I know you've tried lots of different things. What does your process look like, more or less, if someone to observe you testing this?
I mean, a lot of the diets I do are actually, they might be complex and they're trying to understand why you would do them, but the actual execution of them is extremely simple. Like right now, we basically eat steak and eggs, and that's it. So it's very, very simple. And the monitoring, I monitor blood. I do my bloods when I'm doing a specific experiment, not all the time. But if I'm doing something unusual, then I will see like how do different markers move, and I do a broad panel because I don't really know if anything. I don't necessarily expect anything will change, but I do monitor that. I monitor my weight. I monitor how I feel generally, and I monitor how I climb. So there's a small suite of markers there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for that, Dave. And I hope you've all enjoyed listening. That is me getting Dave into a corner in a short time frame, but I think it's really interesting just doing that. I immediately want to go way deeper on this stuff, and I can see you're egging to go and do exactly the same thing. So if you do want to see the long form discussion around all these topics, we're going to release that on the podcast, and you can listen to the whole thing where me and Dave dive into each of these questions and topics in a much longer form. And you can check those out on our podcast. It's really easily accessible on Spotify, iTunes, etc. But otherwise, thanks for listening. Dave, thanks for being pushed into a corner, and let's get stuck in the big ones.
Cool.